Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining today. My name is Jonathan Watkins, and I'm a partner in a company called JBX Strategies. We're a digital marketing agency. I was going to say digital marketing agency. We're a marketing agency out of the Twin Cities of the great state of Minnesota. And today we are going to talk about something that many businesses misunderstand about SEO. Okay. And what SEO is, and we'll get into it a little bit in detail. For those of you that aren't familiar with SEO, this is going to be a little bit deeper webinar than we've done in the past. And so we've had this transgression of, what is SEO and how to use it in your business. So this is the last webinar in our SEO series. So we do get a little bit technical, so hang in there with us. But most companies, think about SEO or search engine optimization is is about rankings, right? And obviously rankings are super important, but um, the real goal of SEO isn't necessarily all about rankings. And I'm going to walk you through today, a simple framework, and we can put an asterisk by simple, but what we call, the SEO feedback loop, okay? And this framework helps turn website data into real business growth. So how can we use our website to grow the company? And that's really what we're going to talk about today. All right, what's the big problem? One of the biggest misconceptions about, SEO is that rankings equal success. And Sophie's going to bring up a page here, and we'll go back kind of the basics and what are rankings and what does that mean. And as Sophie shares her page on Google, a lot of businesses they celebrate when they rank number one on Google, and obviously it's super important, right? And you do want to rank number one on Google, and you want to be on that first page, and that's really our whole existence is getting clients to rank on that first page so their phones ring more. But do rankings, rankings alone do not generate revenue. So I'll put my glasses on so I can see I'm getting old here, and I'll run through this. So if you want to go back, if you start here, this is like if someone Googles electrical services near me. And at the very beginning, you've got what's called LSA, or what we call Google calls local service area ads. Thank you, Sophie, for showing that. So you can get their profile, you can call them. And then below LSA, and this is if you pay Google to do advertising, right? So those LSA or local service area ads show up first if you qualify to do LSA. And most home service companies do qualify for LSA ads. And then you've got sponsored results, and those are what we call PPC or pay per click. And then if you keep scrolling down, then you've got the map listings. And Google's just changed this. Before, with all the SEO work and the blogs and writing content and posting online and getting Google reviews are very important. You could get yourself, you can get in the map listing. And being in the map listing is obviously very important as well. Google is allowing companies now to start paying for to pay you can pay to actually get in the map listing, which is crazy, and that's why they're $1 trillion company, right? And then the organic piece is underneath, the people also ask, and we've had a whole webinar on that whole people also ask, and I don't have time to get into it today, but you can write content to get into that people also ask, and I'll talk about that a little bit later in this webinar. And then what you see below that is you've got the what we call organic search, right? So if you're doing your own search engine optimization or you've got an SEO package with a marketing company, this is what their existence is about, is getting you ranked in this organic piece and getting you on page number one, right? So my point is I'm being a little bit facetious, is you can certainly rank high, and it's important to rank high, but you can still attract the wrong visitors. And you can rank high and generate very few leads. And so you can have people come to your website and then leave without contacting you. And this is what I'm going to talk about today, is how we can get people to stay on your website longer, and how you can, and really how do you grow revenue by doing that. So, SEO, it really works. When I say SEO, I'm referring to search engine optimization, right? And that's just what we talked about and what I showed you. It's how do you know, SEO, my point is SEO really only works when it's connected to real business outcomes. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. All right, what actually drives revenue? So what actually drives revenue online? There are four key things, and I'll run through these quick. Um, Better traffic. Number one is just better traffic, and I'm not going to read this verbatim, but what that means is attracting people who are actively searching for the services you offer. And then second is better intent, right? Your website needs to answer exactly what someone is searching for. And I'm going to read that again because that may be one of the most important sentences in this whole 30-minute webinar. Your website needs to answer exactly what someone is searching for. And I'll talk about city pages and service pages here in a bit. Um, and I'll just give you a quick example. And we've all done it, right? You've gone to search for something and then you get to a website and it maybe brings you to their about page where it's talking about their founder. And you were looking for trailer service repair and you go to the main website, or you're looking for landscape pavers and you go to a website landscape or a website for a landscaping company and it's talking about, their about page, right? That's a bad customer experience. So you, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but we need to bring people to your website, but more importantly, we need to bring people to your website for what they're exactly searching for. All right. Third, having clear conversation pathways. And what I mean by that, we need to make it easy for someone to call you, request a quote, or schedule a consultation. Those are really the three things. And we'll show you an example of a client of ours for a website that we built not too long ago called Village Green Landscapes. So if you're able to pull that up, perfect. All right. So what I mean by to make it easy is you can see we've got the phone number in the top, and then we've got the info at, so you can email them and you can request a quote. Look at your website today at some point and make sure it's super easy. Do you have call to action spread throughout your website? And most people do today in 2026. They've got the phone number up there, but make sure you're easy to do business with, is my point here. Thank you, Sophie, for sharing that. And then, the fourth thing is, just making adjustments based on what the data is telling you. And we'll give you some tools and show you where you can find this data. If you have someone on your staff that's super analytical and they love this stuff, or you can certainly work with a company like us. And today, this is not a sales pitch, but some of this stuff is technical, and we can certainly help you out with it. All right. All right, what is the SEO feedback loop? It sounds kind of confusing, but we'll dumb this down. You know, think of it like tuning an engine in a car, right? You just, or getting an oil change as an example, right? Or your 50,000 mile maintenance, right? The website's the same thing. You don't just build it and hope it works forever, right? You have to consistently um, make changes, and you've got to constantly improve it based on what the data tells you. And so, what do I mean by that? You've got to collect the data, okay? And we use a tool called SEMrush. There's mo lots of tools out there. Google's got a lot of tools, but there's tools out there, and you guys can certainly Google that. But you've got to collect the right data, and I'll tell you how to do that here in a second. But you've got to understand what people are searching for, and and what pages they visit on your website, and how they interact with your site. Most people didn't, and before I got in this business, I came from the other side. I owned a technology company, and it's like, oh, we got to make changes to our website, and we never did. I didn't have any idea that you got to provide what people are searching for, right? And then we analyze intent and behavior. That's the second thing we do. And what I mean by that is we look at what people are actually trying to find, and once they landed on your website. So when they're on your website, where do they go? Did they stay and read a certain page? Did they click around? Or did they leave right away? And that's the data that we have, or you as a business owner, if you've got your website, you have, right? And like I said, there's tools that you can get to analyze that data if you're so inclined. And the third thing is revenue signals, right? These are clues that show us what is actually generating the leads and the phone calls. And maybe it's a certain service page, and I'll define a service page here in a second, but maybe it's a certain service page that gets a lot of quote requests, or there's a keyword that you're using, um, like ready to when you're ready to hire someone. So, and then the fourth thing is just, keep refining that strategy. And what that means is keep improving the pages that matter most. And what I mean by pages is pages on your website and service pages and city pages. Better content, um, stronger call to actions, which I just showed you earlier, and then clearer information for potential customers. Don't make it confusing for customers. And then, rinse and repeat because marketing is never one and done. It's never finished. And what we're seeing is the companies that grow consistently, and at the end of the day, the people on this webinar, they want to grow, and um, you just got to keep learning from what the data is telling you and improve your website over time. And I get into this a little bit later, but I'll clarify it. The website and SEO is just one channel. You've got advertising as another channel. If you have a sales rep and they're prospecting and making cold calls, that's a channel. You've got email marketing, that's a channel. You've got BNI. We're just talking about the marketing channel as it relates to your website and SEO today. All right, what data matters? What's important? And many businesses, they do focus on the wrong metrics, and I'm going to tell you what to focus on. Again, I'm being a little bit facetious, but I'm doing it to make a point as part of this webinar is, they look at the rankings, right? And they look at the traffic and they look at impressions. And I'll tell you, when we started the company, when we interviewed a lot of people, there's a lot of, and I'm not tooting my own horn, but I am gonna a little bit today is when you have your monthly calls with your marketing agency or your marketing person, whoever's doing that for your company, they're like, look at our rankings and look at how much traffic we have and look at impressions. It is important, right? Rankings are important. Website traffic, you do want to see that growing. You want to see impressions growing. And those numbers can be helpful, but they don't always tell the full story. And what we really want to understand or what you as a business owner wants to understand. And in this webinar is for that business owner or your general manager, whoever's running the company in the day-to-day operations, is what we really want to understand, or what you want to understand is what leads to actual business results. Because at the end of the day, you want to be, unless we're working with a nonprofit, but usually we're working with .com, so you want to be profitable. And so we want to know what pages lead to phone calls. We want to know what pages lead to quote requests. We want to understand what pages help close deals because, at the end of the day, traffic without conversions is just noise. All those vanity, we call them vanity metrics. They're important, but at the end of the day, you've got to be making more money with your marketing. All right. Revenue pages. Most websites have three types of pages. They're traffic pages, and those real quick are, those pages bring people to your website by answering questions. And one example would be an FAQ page, right? And frequently asked question page. And if you don't have one, you've got to get one on your website. And with full transparency, it's one of the only things that we don't have on our website that we are working on and that we're putting up there because I have done a ton of research on it and it's something that's super important. Another example would be a landscaping client. Um, they might publish an article called, how much does landscaping cost? Or, best grass for Minnesota lawns. These types of pages attract visitors and they build awareness. Second are authority pages, right? These pages build trust, and I'll give you an example of that. Those are case studies, project galleries, customer reviews, and your about page. There's plugins, right? So if you got Google reviews, you can have a plugin on your website to Google, and it'll scroll. And I don't think we showed you on that Village Green example, but you can scroll your customer reviews and that makes a big difference. And that just shows customers that you are experienced and you're credible. And then the third type of page is just pages designed to generate leads and revenues, right? And so for a home service company, that might be, do you have a design page? Do you have a patio installation page? Do you have a retaining wall page? Do you have a snow removal page? Or do you have a page where someone can request a quote or a contact us page? Those are pages that people land on when they're ready to hire someone. And On a side note, if you guys do, and I'm getting ahead of myself, but our next webinar is going to be on sales and sales process and how to close more deals from those pages. A little sneak peek for next month is you've got to respond to those within 5 minutes. So if you guys are getting a phone call or form fill, it's drop everything and call that person back or respond to that form fill. All right. So another tidbit, and I know Sophie's super passionate about that. Uh, Before, and you don't have to go back to that previous slide, Sophie, but you should really have a service page for every service that you have. And what I mean is a separate page on your website for every service. Don't lump all your services into one page because if someone's searching for, paver patio and you bring them to a section on mulch, that is a bad customer experience and clients get frustrated like that. And Google knows that and then they penalize you. So you make sure you have a separate service page for all your services. And if you're a local service business serving like a community or 10 cities, have a city page for every city that you service. All right. Search intent. When people search online, they usually fall into one of four categories. Um, some people are learning. Some people are researching certain options, and some are really ready to hire someone. And then some are just looking for a specific company. And just know that not every visitor is there to convert, and that's normal, right? The goal is to attract the visitors who are closest to making a decision. All right, behavior tells the truth. One of the most powerful things about marketing and specifically digital marketing is that we can see exactly how people interact with your website. Again, there's many tools out there. You can Google that. SEMrush is a tool that we use that I've referenced before. Google has a bunch of tools. There's, like I said, there's a ton of software. It's expensive. I will tell you that. I look at our cost and what we pay for software. So just let you know if you want us to certainly do an audit, we can do that. But you can see really how long someone stays on your page. You can see how far they scroll. You can see what they click on. You can say when they leave it and where they were when they left it. And this is data that it often reveals, friction points and opportunities to improve the user experience. And at the end of the day, it is about the customer experience and the user experience and the whole sales operations. I want you guys to start thinking from a sales and operations. And I've got a slide later that, you know, back in the day, you had your marketing department and you had your sales department. They're two separate departments and they're always fighting over each other. It's like, where's my leads? Like Glengarry Glen Ross, if you've ever saw that movie. But it's like, where's my leads? Now we're companies really, it's all one department with one leader. All right, what are the revenue signals? When we analyze this data, we can start to see patterns. So if you have someone in your organization that can do this, um, there are certain keywords that consistently generate leads, right? And you guys can use AI again to do keyword research and find out what people are searching. You can see intent. SEMrush can see what people are searching for and what the keywords are for your industry. And as I mentioned earlier, those pages and having your separate pages for your cities that you service and then your services, those all will help you guys close deals. And then long tail keyword searches that show buying intent. I'll just give you an example. What do I mean by that? Landscape designer near me, and I'm using landscaping because that was the website we showed you earlier, but of a client of ours called Village Green. But landscape design near me is much closer to hiring someone than searching, for landscaping ideas, right? And so those signals help guide this whole strategy. All right, I got about 5 slides left here in about 11 minutes, so we'll bust this out. All right, what are the hidden opportunities? One of the things that we've learned over the years that, some of the biggest marketing opportunities are already sitting on your website. They're just a little bit hidden, you know. And I'll give you an example. Sometimes, we find pages that are already ranking in Google, maybe around, you know, position 5 to 15. And that's telling us that Google already thinks the page is valuable and it has some it has some value there and Google trusts you, you know. So, just with a few improvements, that page might jump to the top of the results. And, that can dramatically, increase leads. Another opportunity that we look for is in keywords is um, they get a lot of impressions, but very few clicks. So they're, hey, you're getting impressions, but they're not clicking. And what does that mean? And that usually means people are seeing your listing in Google, but it's something about the headline or the description that isn't convincing, them to click. And so sometimes a simple change there can make a big difference. And so we also look for pages that get a lot of traffic, but very few conversions. And what is the data telling us? And it usually means people are interested in the topic, but the page isn't guiding them toward taking action. So the website's a pretty sophisticated piece of content, right, when it comes down to it, and there's certainly a lot to it. So, another thing we're seeing, and is maybe the call to action isn't clear, right? So, maybe the page doesn't answer the questions the customers have before you hire someone. And sometimes we find the opposite situation. We'll see pages, that convert really well, but then they're not getting traffic. So it's kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. So when we see that, we're like, okay, we know that if we can drive more visitors to that page, we can often increase leads quickly. So there's a lot of data to analyze. And my point here is that many times the opportunity to grow isn't about starting over. It's about, improving what already exists. Just one more example to kind of put this into context, but if you're a landscaping company and if your patio installation page already converts well, but only gets a small amount of traffic, improving that page's ranking in Google could significantly increase the number of quote requests you receive. And at the end of the day, that's what you really want. And you want to follow up really fast too. So there's a lot to do, but that will certainly help you. All right, as we wrap up here, we've got um, refine, don't start. I think another mistake some businesses sometimes make is constantly rebuilding their website without understanding what's working and what isn't. In many cases, the foundation of a website is actually pretty good. And we audit websites all the time, and we can certainly audit yours and say, okay, here's what's working, here's what's not working. And when that's the case, you guys can often just improve the results by refining what already exists, right? And that might include like improving internal links. Um, Tweaking your call to actions, making them different on separate pages, right? So they don't all match, and seeing we can determine, or you guys can determine, well, I got more clicks on one that said call for a free quote or schedule a consultation, right? So just by changing up a word or two, you can see what one's getting, more clicks. So small improvements like that can produce um, fairly big results over time. And sometimes the reality is that the website just isn't built properly to begin with. And maybe it's slow. Speed is a major factor, and I won't get into it too much today, but you can do a speed test on your website and see how fast it is for desktop and mobile. Uh, we do host websites, and you really want to have a fast website because Google rewards a fast website. If people are searching and the load times are really slow, and you remember in the day, when you'd search sometimes a website and it was super crappy web hosting, and you see the hourglass and it just spin, and you can't have that. And maybe it's hard to navigate, and sometimes in those situations, then what we'll do is we'll just start over and build you guys a brand new website. And those are, we'll build websites as part of our package for our clients. All right. So, when we work with many of our clients, like I said, a lot of times we'll build a new website. The key idea here is whether we refine it or rebuild it, the goal is really the same. It's to create a website that actually generates leads and supports the growth of the business. And then it's in harmony with sales. And I'll talk about that in my next slide. All right, align SEO with sales. One of the biggest mistakes businesses make is treating marketing and sales, and I mentioned that earlier, as two completely separate things. I think they've got to be uh, they've got to report to one person on the org chart. Your website should actually support the whole, the same conversations that you're already having with your customers. So I want you guys to think about this. Think about the questions people ask when they call your business. For example, how much does this cost? How long will it take for my truck to get fixed? What makes you different? Why should I work with you versus X, Y, and Z? Um, what should I expect during this process? So start to think about the questions that your clients are asking you and if you can have your operations manager or whoever's dealing with those clients and they call in, write down some of those FAQs, and then you can write content and blogs around what people are asking you. But the opportunity is if your website answers those questions before someone even calls you, you've already built up trust and credibility, and something really, I guess, powerful happens. It's your clients are becoming more educated and they trust you more. And they're that much closer to making a decision, right? And that means your website isn't generating traffic. It's really helping shorten the sales cycle. So when your marketing and sales work together like that, your website becomes one of the most powerful tools in your business. All right, repeat and scale. When this feedback loop starts working, as I mentioned, something powerful happens. Your marketing stops feeling random, right? Does this working? Does this work? Is this working what I'm doing? Am I spending this money on marketing? Does it work? And we're not guessing, right? You start making decisions based on the real data, and your content gets smarter because you understand what people are searching for. So always think from your customer's paradigm. I always talk about Stephen Covey and the Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. It was a book I read back in, well, it's probably 20 years ago, but it's still a big hit. But think about from your customer's point of view. So your conversion rates, will improve because your website is guiding visitors towards, taking action, whether that's calling you or, requesting a quote or scheduling an estimate. Those improvements, they will compound and more traffic will lead to more leads. And I know I said that earlier is like, yeah, traffic and impressions are they important? And I'm being a little bit facetious. It is very important because historically, if you've got, 300 people going to your website versus 500, if you're doing some of these things and we're doing some of these as your marketing company, it's going to lead to more customers. There's just no question. And the data says that. All right. Um, all right. We covered a lot and I'm just going to pause for a second and y- how do I phrase this? At some point, we covered a lot, and you might be saying, "Hey, Jonathan, this really sounds great, but who the heck has all the time to do all of this, right?" A lot of you guys are small to medium-sized businesses. Your revenue is anywhere from 500 to 5 million, and it's a fair question, right? You guys are busy running your companies, and this is the only slide that I have in here where I'm going to talk about whether it's us or you hire somebody is um, you may not have someone that you may have someone that doesn't have, how do I phrase it? You don't have the time to consistently analyze the search data and monitor behavior and improve the pages and adjust the strategy, right? So in many growing companies, this work is handled by a full-time digital marketing professional, right? And today a good marketing person and I'll tell you, just a good SEO person, they're 85 to 100 grand. And it is hard to find a marketing person that can be an expert in SEO and all the other things. So, most small to mid-sized companies, they just aren't ready for that type of investment. So that's where it is nice where if you do work with a marketing agency, like ours or there's a lot of great ones out there, but you can get your graphics from them. You can have them build landing pages. You can have them post content for you. You can have them set up, your CRM for you. So that's all I really want to say there is a lot of times it'll be cheaper to hire an agency to do some of this stuff for you, but um, that's really what I want to do. So even if you never plan to do this work yourself, I really wanted you guys on this call and gals on this call to understand how the system works to help you make better decisions about your marketing. And have you guys know that that data exists and it's out there. And again, you can certainly use the tools that we talked about, like SEMrush and Google. So, all right. And I think we'll wrap up there. I had one more slide, but I want to be respectful of everyone's time. We covered a lot today. And I guess with that being said, um, I'd like to thank everyone for jumping on this call. I appreciate it. If you guys certainly want an audit of your website to see what's working, what's not working, or you want to chat more in detail about this, we can certainly circle back and feel free to reach out to us. But thank you guys for joining and gals, and have a blessed day and have a great rest of your week. We'll talk soon.